The summer night was warm and peaceful in New York City. Parents tucked their children into bed, reading stories, and giving goodnight kisses, just like any other evening. Nobody knew that this ordinary night would change human history forever. Tom Russell sat in his daughter Kate's room, watching her chest rise and fall with each peaceful breath. He had just finished reading her favorite space adventure book. The irony of what was about to happen would strike him later. At age 8, Kate loved anything related to stars and aliens. Her room was filled with glowing plastic stars and posters of distant galaxies. "Just one more story, Dad?" Kate asked sleepily, her blue eyes fighting to stay open. "Not tonight, sweetheart. But tomorrow we'll read too," Tom promised, pulling her blanket up to her chin. He kissed her forehead and walked to the door, pausing to look back at his little girl one last time. Something made him linger there longer than usual, as if some deep instinct was trying to warn him. Across the world, in London, Moscow, Beijing, and countless other cities, similar scenes played out. Parents said goodnight to their children, not knowing it would be their last chance to do so for a very long time. The first sign came at exactly 3:33 a.m. Eastern Time. Every electronic device on Earth flickered simultaneously. In the New York sky, a massive shape appeared, darker than the night itself. It wasn't just one ship. Hundreds of identical vessels emerged from what looked like tears in the fabric of space. They made no sound. They sent no message. They simply appeared and waited. Tom woke up to the sound of silence. As a former Special Forces operator, he had learned to notice when things were too quiet. His bedside clock was blinking 3:34 a.m. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. He rushed to Kate's room, his bare feet silent on the wooden floor. The door was still open, exactly as he had left it. But Kate's bed was empty. The sheets were disturbed as if she had been sleeping there just moments ago. Her favorite stuffed astronaut toy lay on the floor, something she would never willingly leave behind. Down the street, he heard the first scream, then another, and another. Parents were discovering their children missing all across the neighborhood. Tom ran to the window and looked up at the massive ship hovering over the city. Its surface seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, making it look like a hole had been torn in the sky. His phone started ringing. It was his old military buddy, Mike, whose son was the same age as Kate. "Tom, Jack's gone. Are you?" "Kate too." Tom cut him off, his voice tight with controlled anger. "What are you seeing on your end?" "Reports coming in from everywhere. It's not just here. It's global. Children between 5 and 12, just gone. Military's mobilizing. But against what? These ships, they're unlike anything we've ever seen." Tom was already moving, pulling on his clothes and strapping on the gun he kept locked in his bedside safe. "Meet me at the old spot in 20 minutes. Bring everything you can." As he grabbed his keys, Tom noticed Kate's space book on the kitchen counter. Next to it was her half-finished drawing of what she imagined aliens would look like, friendly green creatures with big smiles. The sight made his throat tight. He folded the drawing and put it in his pocket. Outside, the streets were filling with desperate parents. Some were screaming their children's names into the night sky. Others stood in shocked silence, staring up at the enormous ships. Police sirens wailed in the distance, and military jets could be heard approaching the city. But Tom knew conventional weapons would be useless against beings capable of such technology. This wasn't going to be a war fought with guns and missiles. This was going to require something else, something these aliens clearly hadn't counted on: the lengths human parents would go to get their children back. As he started his car, Tom made a silent promise to Kate. "I'm coming for you, sweetheart. And heaven help anyone or anything that tries to stop me." The first rays of dawn were breaking over the horizon, revealing more ships than anyone could count. Humanity's longest night was over, but its darkest days were just beginning. 3 days after the children vanished, the world was barely holding together. Parents hadn't slept. Cities had ground to a halt. Governments were failing to maintain order. The alien ships remained silent in the sky, immune to all attempts at communication or attack. Tom sat in an emergency command center that had been set up in an old military bunker. Dozens of screens showed news feeds from around the world. Mike worked nearby, coordinating with other military contacts. They had gathered a group of parents with special forces backgrounds, all of whom had lost children. Incoming transmission, someone shouted. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Every screen in the bunker switched to the same image. What appeared made everyone step back in shock. The alien was tall, with a body that looked like living crystal. Light seemed to move through its transparent form, creating patterns that shifted like flowing water. People of Earth, it spoke in perfect English, its voice seeming to come from everywhere at once. We are the collectors. We have watched your civilization for many years. Today we come with news that may upset you, but you must understand it is for the greater good. Tom's fists clenched as he watched. The alien's tone was calm, almost kind, which made its words even more infuriating. Your children are safe. They have been selected for inclusion in the Great Archive of Species. Your genetic line shows remarkable potential, but your society is too primitive to properly nurture it. We have rescued these young ones from a limited existence. They will be raised among the stars, educated by the finest minds in the galaxy. The room erupted in angry shouts. Tom remained silent, studying the creature's movements, looking for weaknesses. Any attempt to interfere with this process will be met with force. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your technology cannot reach us. Accept this gift we offer. Your children will become something far greater than they could have been on Earth. The alien's form shifted, and suddenly the screen showed images of children. They were in what looked like a massive space station, walking through crystal hallways. Some were crying, others looked scared, but some seemed amazed by their surroundings. Tom searched desperately for Kate among them. See how we care for them, the alien continued. They have comfort, safety, and opportunities beyond your imagination. In time, they will understand. In time, you will understand. Then Tom saw her. Kate was in one of the clips, holding hands with a younger boy he recognized as Mike's son Jack. They were walking together, their faces set in determined expressions he knew well. His daughter wasn't crying or afraid. She was thinking, planning, just as he had taught her. Dr. Ann West, a xenobiologist who had lost her twins in the abduction, stepped forward to study the images more closely. Look at their surroundings, she whispered. The crystal structures. They're not just buildings. They're part of the aliens themselves. Their entire civilization is crystalline in nature. The alien's image returned. We share this message not to ask permission. That time has passed. But to help you find peace. Your children will become part of something greater. Resistance is not just futile. It is unnecessary. We are not your enemies. We are your children's future. The transmission ended, leaving the room in stunned silence. Then Tom noticed something in the last frame of the children's footage. Kate had been tapping her finger against her wrist while walking. To anyone else, it would look like a nervous gesture, but Tom recognized it instantly. It was Morse code. Mike, he called out, his voice tight with controlled excitement. Get me something to write with. Now. As Mike rushed over with a notepad, Tom closed his eyes, replaying the tapping in his mind. When he opened them, he wrote down the message that would change everything. Trackers still work. They can't see them. We are mapping. Kids organizing. Send help. Love you, Dad. Tom looked up at the others, a fierce smile on his face. They made their first mistake, he said. They showed us our children are alive. Their second mistake. They assumed our kids would be helpless. He held up Kate's message. Their worst mistake. They didn't check for tracking devices. For the first time in 3 days, hope began to spread through the room. The aliens thought they were dealing with primitive beings, but they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The underground bunker had transformed into a hub of activity over the past week. Parents who had military, scientific, or technical backgrounds worked around the clock, turning Kate's discovery about the trackers into a real chance at finding their children. Dr. Ann stood before a massive holographic display, showing thousands of tiny dots moving through what looked like a three-dimensional maze. Each dot represented a child's tracking device. The trackers had been a response to a wave of kidnappings 3 years ago. Small chips placed under the skin that could send signals across incredible distances. The signals are coming from somewhere near Jupiter, she explained, pointing to where the dots clustered. The aliens probably didn't even think to look for such simple technology. To them, it must seem as primitive as a stone axe. Tom watched the dots move, his eyes fixed on the one he knew was Kate. The children weren't staying still. They were constantly moving through what had to be the alien station's corridors. His daughter was mapping the place, just as he taught her during their camping trips. "Look at this," Mike said, pointing to a pattern in the movements. "The kids are organizing themselves into groups. See how they move. That's not random wandering. They're doing systematic sweeps of each area." A young computer expert named Bill, whose daughter was among the taken, spoke up from his station. "I've been analyzing the signal patterns. The trackers aren't just sending location data. Some of the kids have figured out how to use them to send simple messages by moving in specific patterns." Tom leaned forward. "What are they saying?" Bill adjusted his screen. "It's like they're using a simplified version of Morse code through movement. They're telling us about the aliens' daily routines, guard patterns, and—" He paused, looking surprised. "They've found what they think is the teleportation control room." The room grew quiet. Dr. Ann walked to a strange device they had recovered from the site of one of the abductions. It looked like a small crystal, similar to the aliens' bodies, but this one had cracked during the teleportation process. "I've been studying this fragment," she said. "These beings aren't just crystal-like in appearance. They're actually living crystals. And like all crystals, they have natural frequencies that can shatter them." She pressed a button, and a high-pitched sound filled the room. The crystal fragment vibrated and then cracked further. "You're saying we can fight them with sound?" Tom asked, hope rising in his voice. "Not just any sound," Dr. Ann replied. "Very specific frequencies. The children's messages indicate the aliens are sensitive to certain noises. They've been testing it by humming at different pitches and watching the guards' reactions." Mike pulled up footage from the aliens' broadcast. "Look at their architecture. Everything is crystalline. Their entire station must be vulnerable to the right sound waves." Tom stood up, his mind racing with possibilities. "So we have their location, we know their weaknesses, and we have inside help from our own kids." He turned to the room full of determined parents. "But we still need to figure out how to get there." Bill raised his hand. "About that, I think the kids have a plan." He pointed to his screen where new movement patterns were emerging. "They're gathering near what they believe is a secondary teleportation chamber, one that's not as heavily guarded." Dr. Ann studied the crystal fragment again. "If we can understand how their teleportation technology works, reverse engineer it from this piece, we can use their own technology against them," Tom finished. He looked around the room at the assembled group of parents. Soldiers, scientists, engineers, and experts of all kinds, united by one purpose. "How long until we can have a working plan?" Mike checked the latest data from the trackers. "The kids are in position. They can maintain their current pattern for 48 hours before the aliens might notice something's wrong." Tom nodded. "Then we have 48 hours to figure this out. Our children are counting on us." He picked up the crystal fragment, feeling its cool surface. "Let's show these aliens why you should never underestimate human parents." The room burst into activity. Scientists huddled around the crystal fragment, engineers began designing sonic weapons, and military personnel started planning insertion routes. The race against time had begun. Dr. Ann hadn't slept in 36 hours. She stood in her lab, surrounded by holographic displays showing DNA structures. The aliens had made a mistake during their last broadcast. They'd shown too much of their medical facilities in the background. Now she finally understood why they had taken the children. Tom, Mike, everyone. "You need to see this," she called out, her voice echoing through the bunker's corridors. The team gathered around her displays. The images showed two DNA structures. One was human, the other crystal-like in structure, but clearly alive. "Look at this," she pointed to the alien DNA. "Their genetic structure is failing. They're a dying species." She brought up more displays. They'd been alive so long, reproduced so carefully, that their DNA has lost its ability to adapt. They're too perfect, too unchanging. Tom studied the displays. "What does this have to do with our kids?" "Everything," Dr. Ann replied. "Human DNA, especially children's DNA, is incredibly adaptable. We constantly evolve, change, adapt to new challenges. These aliens, they can't do that anymore. They're like a crystal that can't grow new faces." Mike leaned forward. "They took our children to save themselves." "Yes, but here's their fatal mistake." Dr. Ann pulled up new images, these taken from the children's ward they'd seen in the broadcast. "They think this is a simple genetic solution. Take human DNA, mix it with theirs, create a new generation. But they don't understand what they're dealing with." She typed quickly, bringing up more data. "They chose children because they're adaptable. But they didn't consider why humans evolved to be so adaptable in the first place." She turned to face the group. "We developed this trait because of our strong family bonds. Human children are adaptable because they know they have parents who will protect them while they learn and grow." Tom remembered Kate's determined face in the broadcast. "Our kids aren't adapting to help the aliens, are they?" "No," Dr. Ann smiled. "They're adapting to fight back. The trackers show they've organized themselves into groups based on their strengths. Some are mapping, others are gathering information, and some are even figuring out the aliens' technology. They're doing what human children do best, learning and working together." Bill rushed into the room with new data from the trackers. "You need to see this. The kids have found something big." He pulled up a map on the main screen. "They've discovered the aliens' main genetic research lab. And guess what? It's right next to their teleportation control center." Tom studied the map. "They're making this easier for us. But why would the aliens put those two facilities so close together?" "Because they think like crystals," Dr. Ann explained. "Ordered, structured, everything in its logical place. They don't understand human chaos theory. They don't get that putting all their important facilities together makes them vulnerable to an organized attack." Mike checked his watch. "We've got 20 hours left before they might notice the kids' pattern. How close are we to figuring out their teleportation technology?" Dr. Ann walked to a device they'd been building. It looked like a mix of human and alien technology, built around the crystal fragment they'd recovered. "We've cracked it. The aliens use crystalline resonance for teleportation. The same frequencies that can shatter them can also activate their transport systems, if we get them exactly right." Tom picked up one of the sonic weapons they'd developed. "So we can teleport in and shatter them at the same time." "Exactly," Dr. Ann nodded. "But we'll need perfect timing. The kids will have to be ready to move the moment we arrive. Any delay, and the aliens could lock down the station." "They'll be ready," Tom said confidently. "They've proven they're smarter and braver than the aliens ever expected. We just need to get there." The team gathered around the planning table. They had the aliens' weakness, they had transportation, and most importantly, they had their children working with them from the inside. Now they just needed a plan that would bring everyone home safely. "Let's do this," Tom said, laying out a map of the station. "It's time to show these aliens their biggest mistake wasn't taking our children. It was underestimating human families." The final briefing room was packed with 30 parents, each wearing black tactical gear modified with crystal technology. They had trained for this moment for the past 12 hours, practicing with the sonic weapons until every movement was perfect. Time was almost up. "One last time," Tom said, standing before the group. "The moment we teleport in, the aliens will know we're there. We'll have exactly 10 minutes before they can reorganize their defenses." He pointed to the station map, now detailed with information from the children's reconnaissance. Dr. Ann stepped forward, holding up one of the sonic devices. "Remember, these weapons have 3 settings. Low frequency will stun them, medium will immobilize them, and high will shatter them. Use the high setting only if absolutely necessary. We don't want to risk damaging the station's structure while we're inside it." Mike checked the latest tracker data. The kids are in position. Kate's group has 20 children hidden near the backup teleporter. Jack's team has another 30 ready to move from the lower levels. The rest are stationed in small groups throughout the station, ready to move when we give the signal. Bill monitored the communication system they developed. "We've got confirmation from all groups. The kids have managed to smuggle small crystals from the research lab. When we arrive, they'll use them to create sonic disruptions throughout the station. It'll act as a diversion." Tom felt a surge of pride. Even in space, even among aliens, the children had found ways to fight back. They hadn't just survived, they had prepared for rescue. "Crystals are charging," Dr. Ann announced, watching the teleportation device power up. "Remember, the aliens' bodies are part of their technology. When we disrupt their physical forms with the sonic weapons, we'll also disrupt their systems. They won't be able to use their own teleporters against us." The room hummed with energy as the modified crystals reached full power. Each parent checked their gear one last time. They carried no traditional weapons, only the sonic devices and emergency teleporter crystals for the children. 60 seconds to transport," Bill called out. "The kids are starting their diversion." On the monitors, they could see chaos erupting throughout the station. Small sonic pulses from the stolen crystals were causing disruptions everywhere. Alien guards rushed to different areas, their crystalline forms flickering with agitation. 30 seconds, Dr. Ann said, her hand on the main crystal. "The frequency is locked on the children's location." Tom looked at the assembled parents. Some were soldiers, some were scientists, some were just ordinary people who had trained day and night for this moment. All of them had one thing in common: they would do anything to save their children. 10 seconds, Bill announced. "Kids are confirming the area is clear." "Remember," Tom said, his voice firm. "We go in fast, we hit hard, and we protect the children at all costs. The aliens think they're superior because they're more advanced. Let's show them what real evolution looks like. Parents who will cross the solar system to protect their kids." 5 seconds, Dr. Ann called out. The crystal began to pulse with blinding light. Tom gripped his sonic weapon, thinking of Kate. He had promised to read her 2 stories the night she was taken. Now he was going to keep that promise. 3, 2, 1. The world dissolved into pure light. Tom felt his body break apart and reform. When his vision cleared, he found himself in a crystalline corridor. Around him, other parents materialized, weapons ready. Ahead, he could hear the sound of running feet, their children moving according to plan. An alien alarm began to sound, its crystalline tone echoing through the station. But it was already too late. Operation Kindergarten had begun, and the aliens were about to learn that they hadn't captured helpless children. They had brought together the most determined rescue force in human history. "Move," Tom ordered, and the parents surged forward, sonic weapons humming with power. The real battle for their children was about to begin. The crystalline corridors of the alien station erupted into chaos. Sonic weapons hummed through the air as the rescue team advanced. The aliens, their bodies glowing with alarm, found themselves facing something they had never encountered before: human parents fighting for their children. Tom led the first group down the main corridor, following the path Kate had mapped out. 3 alien guards appeared ahead, their crystal forms pulsing with defensive energy. Before they could react, Tom's team hit them with synchronized sonic bursts. The aliens froze, their bodies vibrating at the disruptive frequency. Left corridor clear. Mike called out from another section. Kids are moving to Point Alpha. Through the station's transparent walls, Tom could see other teams making progress. The aliens had built their station to be beautiful, with clear crystal walls that let them see everything. Now that same design worked against them, letting the rescue team coordinate their movements perfectly. Suddenly, Kate's voice came through their communication system. "Dad, we got 30 kids ready at Junction 7. The aliens are trying to lock down the teleporters." "Copy that," Tom replied, his heart jumping at hearing his daughter's voice. "Dr. Ann, how long can they hold the teleporters?" Dr. Ann's voice crackled through the system as she worked from their base back on Earth. "The alien systems are crystalline-based. Every sonic blast weakens their control. Keep hitting their guard posts." A massive alien appeared at the end of the corridor, its body twice the size of the others. The leader they had seen in the broadcast. It spoke, its voice resonating through the crystal walls. "You primitive beings," it said, "you risk everything with your chaos. The children are meant for a greater purpose." Tom adjusted his sonic weapon to maximum frequency. "They're meant to be with their families." The alien leader raised its arms, and the corridor began to shift, crystal walls moving to create a barrier. But before it could complete the change, a high-pitched sound rang out from behind it. The alien leader staggered, its form vibrating. Behind the creature stood Kate and Jack, holding the stolen crystal shards they had taken from the lab. Other children appeared in doorways and corridors, each with their own crystals, all humming at the exact frequency Dr. Ann had discovered. "Now, Dad," Kate shouted. Tom fired his sonic weapon. The combined frequencies from the children's crystals and the rescue team's weapons hit the alien leader at once. Its crystalline form shuddered, cracked, and finally shattered into harmless fragments. Through the station's communication system, they could hear the aliens' confusion. Their perfect, ordered world was falling apart in the face of human determination and cooperation. "All teams," Tom called out, "move to extraction points." "Kids, just like we practiced." The rescue operation transformed into a perfectly choreographed dance. Children emerged from hiding places, running to meet the rescue teams. Parents who found their kids quickly moved to help others. The aliens, their leader gone and their systems disrupted, could only watch as their captives slipped away. In the main teleportation chamber, Bill worked frantically at the controls. Portal stability at 80%. Teams Alpha through Delta, move now. Groups of parents and children vanished in flashes of light, returning to Earth. The aliens tried to mount a final defense, but the remaining children activated their crystals all at once, creating a wall of sonic disruption that kept them at bay. "Final teams, move," Tom ordered. He watched as Kate helped younger children through the portal, refusing to leave until others were safe, just like her father would do. The last group gathered in the teleportation chamber. Through the crystal walls, they could see alien reinforcements approaching. Kate finally ran to Tom's side, grabbing his hand. "Ready to go home?" he asked. She grinned up at him. "Ready for those 2 stories you promised." The teleporter hummed to life one last time. As the light engulfed them, Tom saw the aliens watching through the walls. In their crystalline faces, he finally saw understanding. They had completely underestimated what humans would do for their children. The station vanished in a flash of light, and Earth welcomed its children home. 1 week after the rescue, Tom sat in the same underground bunker where it had all started. The room looked different now. Screens showed happy reunions instead of tracking data, and the sound of children's laughter echoed through the corridors. But their work wasn't finished yet. Dr. Ann stood before the main display, addressing representatives from every major government. The alien ships still hovered in Earth's orbit, but they had not attacked. They seemed frozen, waiting. "The aliens' genetic problem is real," she explained, showing the DNA analysis. "Their species is dying, but they went about solving it in completely the wrong way." On another screen, camera feeds showed children helping scientists understand the alien technology they had learned about during their captivity. Kate stood among them, explaining to a group of experts how the crystal communications worked. These children, Dr. Ann continued, didn't just survive captivity. They learned, adapted, and organized. They showed us exactly what makes humans different from the collectors. We don't just survive. We help each other survive. Tom watched as the alien transmission signal appeared on the main screen. They were finally responding to Earth's messages. The crystalline face that appeared was different from their leader, younger, less rigid. People of Earth, the alien spoke, its tone lacking the arrogance of their previous communications. We acknowledge our error. We sought to save our species through force, but we have learned a costly lesson. The new alien leader's form shifted, showing images of the rescue operation. Your children did not submit to our control. Instead, they formed bonds, created their own order within our chaos. And you, their protectors, crossed space itself to reach them. We have never seen such adaptation. Mike stepped forward, standing beside Tom. Are you surrendering? We are requesting dialogue, the alien replied. Our species faces extinction, but now we understand. We cannot simply take what we need. We must learn from you. Tom looked at Kate, who nodded encouragingly. During their captivity, she and the other children had learned much about the aliens' plight. They understood both the collector's desperation and their mistake. Here is our offer, Tom said, his voice firm. Leave Earth's orbit. Return to your home. If you want to learn from humanity, do it the right way, through cooperation, not kidnapping. Our children have shown us that your species can change if you're willing to try. Dr. Ann added, we can help you understand why human DNA adapts so well. We can teach you about the connection between family bonds and evolutionary success, but only if you respect our rights as a species. The alien was silent for a moment, its crystalline form shifting with new patterns. The children, they already began teaching us, though we did not realize it. They showed us that true adaptation comes from love, from the desire to protect others, not just ourselves. Exactly, Tom said. That's the fatal mistake you made. You thought taking our children would give you their adaptability. But that ability comes from the bonds between us. You can't steal that. You have to build it. The alien leader's form brightened. We accept your terms. Our ships will leave Earth's orbit, but we request permission to send diplomatic representatives, to learn, to understand, and perhaps to build those bonds you speak of. Kate stepped forward. Dad, they can change. We saw it. Some of the younger aliens started protecting us from the stricter ones. They just need to learn how families are supposed to work. Tom looked around the room, at the parents who had fought across space, at the children who had shown incredible courage, and at the scientists ready to solve this problem the right way. Humanity had faced its first major alien contact with the strength of family bonds. They had shown the galaxy that Earth wasn't primitive. It was the home of something far more powerful than advanced technology. You can send your diplomats, Tom announced. Let's show you what real evolution looks like. Species working together, learning from each other, building something new. As the alien transmission ended, Kate hugged her father. Can we have those 2 stories now? Tom laughed, holding his daughter close. How about 3? I think we've earned an extra one. Above them, the alien ships began to leave Earth's orbit, their crystalline forms catching the sunlight one last time. They had come as conquerors but were leaving as students, having learned that the strongest force in the universe wasn't technology or evolution. It was the love between parents and their children.